Field Vision Sports presents The Matchup with Sasha Bushka.
Kyler Murray kind of looks like a little kid running from his parents when he scrambles in the pocket.
Scott Bushka.
I had to tell my daughter that today wasn't really about her first day of school. It was really about me and the launch of our company.
And Cody Alexander.
Randomly, no. As somebody who's been around football my entire life, I literally can say that I've never smelled smelling salts, nor have I ever seen anybody actually have smelling salts. I'm sure that they were used at some point.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to the Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Excited to have you with us for episode 13 here today. I'm your host, Sasha Bushka, joined by head of football ops, Cody Alexander, and the king of the castle, Scott Bushka, fresh off of his exciting trip. Fellas, how we feeling today?
Doing great.
Is that
What do they call
your
quick question, Scott? What do they call like the king of Disneyland? What is that figure called?
Walt Disney? I don't know. Your intros are still stupid. I did assume that that intro was an attempt to make fun of me for taking my kids to Disneyland. I won't allow it. I had fun at Disneyland. I'm sure lots of our listeners have had fun at Disneyland. There is football on down in Southern California as well. So nice try, Sasha.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You can't win if you don't try. We've got a big show planned today. We're gonna look back a little bit, look forward. In the looking forward, we'll give our pick of the week, our prop of the week, and our over/under of the week. New little segment planned today that you'll see later on. We're gonna bring producer Felix onto the show and make fun of his power rankings a little bit. So that should be a lot of fun. But we'll start with this. I want to go around the room. I'll start with Cody here and just get a best week 4 performance from everyone. And we'll kind of use that as a way to look back at week 4 before we head into what's going to happen in week 5.
Yeah, I know that they played the Cardinals. Cardinals defense is not great, but you have to be just impressed with what the Washington Commanders are doing. And I think more importantly, we forget that Dan Quinn paired Cliff Kingsbury with Anthony Lynn, who has brought a power run game to this Commanders offense. The run game is really the engine here, which opens up kind of that air raid concept. I think after week 1, Jaden Daniels throwing a bunch of screens, that wasn't cutting it. They needed to throw deep. I think I said this last week. We bullied him enough on Twitter to get him to finally throw to McLaurin deep and let Jaden Daniels do what he does the best, which is he's a beautiful deep ball thrower. And that's where we are. This is going to be a very tough offense. And then so now we're getting rumors that Devontae Adams may be able to join them. You add that with McLaurin, man, they may just be trying to outscore everybody until they can get to the draft next year and free agency and bring in some defenders, because they're basically building this like a college team.
Yeah, Cody, let me ask you this, because I agree that the Commanders had an impressive performance last week. I agree that Jaden Daniels has been ridiculously impressive throughout this whole year. Vegas obviously still doesn't believe them because I'll just speak for myself. I would have expected to see that spread against the Browns be bigger at home in Washington. So it's interesting, but my long-winded question is, Cliff Kingsbury in his days at Arizona had a tendency to regress in offensive performance throughout the course of a season, right? Like they always started out hot, and then it seemed like defenses adjust and he didn't as much. So I'm just curious if you see that being a risk here. And I know we've already talked about like 2 games in, new OC in New Orleans, and Clint Kubiak looked like a world beater, and it already seems like defenses are adjusting. So I'm just curious what you think the risk of that happening in Washington is.
I do think the Browns matchup is probably not a great one, especially when you're kind of a one man's shop with McLaren. You're not really, there's not a lot of other big time threats. They have not played really the one good team that they've played, the Buccaneers. They did lose to. I'm going to give that a little bit of a pass just because it is week 1. So there is we're going to really know about this team in the next 2 weeks. They're playing the Browns this week, which has a pretty good defense. In fact, Schwartz has started to blitz a little bit more. This was one of those teams where they tried to do everything with a front four last year. That worked. That's not working this year. So now they're blitzing a little bit more behind that or in front of that cover 1. So really, I'm kind of, the jury is out on them as well. I think that defense wins championships. I know that that's a cliche, but that really is true in the NFL. Typically, you're going to have a defense in the top 5. I think the Eagles, when they played the Chiefs, were like the first Super Bowl team that had like a kind of a middle range defense. So I do think you have to have a defense. I don't think I'm not hopping on a Super Bowl or bust train on these guys, but can they win the East? I mean, look at the dysfunction in the Eagles. And then, what are the Cowboys? So if they get another receiver and they feel like they just need to score 40 points a game, this might be one of those teams that can get in a shootout and do it.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. The other thing to watch for with the Commanders is the question that people had about Jaden Daniels coming in. We know he's talented. He's a really slender guy, and he's running the ball quite a bit. And you get teams starting to put pressure on him and stuff. The injury thing, it's one of those things. It's fine until it's not. It's not a problem for you until the guy gets injured. And I'm not even sure who the Washington backup is right now. One of you guys may know, but I would imagine it'll be a problem.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
My thing with him running, scrambling, I think they need to make sure that's okay. Timely quarterback runs. He is a little bit slighter in frame. We've seen this play out with Anthony Richards where you basically make him the feature back, and then you get into some trouble. The Bills have done a really nice job. So hopefully Cliff's going to take a page out of Brady's book and really be cognizant about when you do that. The one difference with this iteration of Kingsbury is I think Anthony Lynn is good enough and is seasoned enough an NFL vet that Quinn's going to lean in. Hey, if we need to run the ball here, we're going to do that. And I think that's the difference. I think he's got bumpers on because what we saw in Arizona, where you just go full on air raid and you kind of dabble in the run game, you don't really kind of do much with it. You're going to end up getting caught quicker than you are by you catching other people.
Yeah. The injury question is so interesting because Daniels definitely looks like he's going to get snapped in half. And there's at least one play every game where you're like, oh, he's definitely not getting up from that.
You're right.
But at least I feel like, and I'm sure I don't have science to back this up, but some guys are just more injury prone. Like Anthony Richardson looks like a cyborg, and he put on more weight this offseason to avoid getting injured. It turns out it didn't help, right? And so I don't know that build always necessarily equates to likelihood of getting injured, but I agree it's a risk, and we'll just have to wait and see with him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. On Cody's point about the run game, no Austin Eckler this week, no problem. Jeremy McNichols and Brian Robinson Jr. tore it up on the ground for the Commanders. Good pick there, Cody. Commanders are looking really solid so far. We'll go to Scott. What team impressed you this week?
Yeah, I'm going with a team that we thought was a Super Bowl contender coming into the season. There were times where they didn't look like it, but I think the version we saw on Monday night of the Detroit Lions was the version we thought we were going to see coming into the start of the season. And what I mean by that is that offensive coordinator Ben Johnson finally got back to, I think, doing what they were built to do and doing what they do best, which is they just bludgeoned the Seahawks with the run the entire game. I believe Jahmyr Gibbs, 14 for 78. David Montgomery, 12 for 40. And then another short screen pass by Montgomery where he just completely ran over Devin Witherspoon, like bounced off him like a bowling ball and went for another 40 yards. This was just a Detroit Lions were tougher and stronger than you game, which, oh, by the way, sets our quarterback up to do what he's designed to do, right?
Yeah.
So the Lions are 3-1. The one game they lost was to the Bucs. They lost 20-16, and Jared Goff threw the ball 55 times. On Monday night against the Seahawks, he threw the ball 18 times. 18 for 18, 292 yards, highly efficient, complemented by a ton of runs and a really good run game. I still think, obviously, the Lions defense has some issues, but before this game, they've been better. Before this game, the secondary's been better, and I think their performance on Monday night was a little bit of game script, right? And the reality, A, like Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense is good, and B, like that game, it got within one score once, but for the most part, the Lions kept them at arm's length the whole time. So I will say most impressive performance, the Lions, and I think it's mostly because it seemed to me that their coaching staff got back to realizing this is what we're built to do, and we can do it really well.
Yeah. And, with the Lions, I think their defense is better, but the obvious strength of their team is still the offense. And if you have an offense that can run the ball that effectively and control the game, it protects your defense a little bit. And they've got two superstar might be too strong, but they've got 2 star running backs. So one could go down and you still have a star running back no matter what. And they got a really good offensive line in front of them. And that's the way they're going to win games.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure at some point we'll talk about the Chiefs on this podcast, but like, okay, the Chiefs' current playmakers, Kareem Hunt, Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, a really old, probably out of shape Travis Kelce, Juju Smith-Schuster, Noah Gray, Sky Moore.
Right.
Anyways, you get my point. The Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, who's probably as fast as Xavier Worthy when he gets the ball in his hands, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta. Like that group of playmakers is ridiculous. And you put that behind like you said, their offensive line, which is the strength of their team. Like I think the only team that can measure up to them if they're healthy from a weapon standpoint is San Francisco. I mean, they have so many good offensive weapons.
Yeah, they complement really well. I am a little bit concerned defensively about their run defense so far. They're 19th in DVOA. This was a team that's been in the top 5 run defense. This is a team that needed to fix the secondary, and you have DJ Reader inside. You have a workhorse in Hutchinson, so that's something to keep an eye on going forward. But I do agree with you when they start. These guys were on. The other thing that you didn't mention. This offense is not afraid to use a 6th offensive lineman. They used it the most last year. They are like 8, 9 deep, which is very rare in the NFL. It's hard to get 10 offensive linemen on your roster that are any good. And so to have 6 that you feel like you could just roll out and start, you add Laporta. That's why they don't necessarily need a second tight end. They just bring in another guy, and that's punishing, and those body blows, those add up over the year.
Yeah. You just got to make sure you report that guy as eligible.
Yes. We learned that against the Cowboys. Yes.
The Lions fans still cheer every time he reports eligible.
I love it. They should.
I'll go to another team that bludgeoned in the run game this week. Most impressive performance of the weekend. I'll go with the Baltimore Ravens. Derrick Henry basically set the tone for the entire game with an 87-yard run where people are like, when he runs the ball, you're either getting stiff-armed or you're just like intentionally diving behind him because you don't want to make the tackle. And he's still faster than everyone on almost every defense when he gets in the open field and gets ahead of steam. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people weren't sure, first of all, if Derrick Henry still had it. And then second of all, if that was the best fit for the Ravens. But I think it's becoming clear, and the Ravens have had so many injuries at running back, it's been hard to tell like what they actually want to do at running back versus just what they've been forced into. But they've had a lot of like scat backs, fast guys, outside runners. Justice Hill, who's doing a great job complementing Derrick Henry. But it's becoming painfully obvious that like running it straight ahead with Henry, with Jackson's ability to go out around the edge, gives them a threat in the run game that basically nobody else has. And it's like pick your poison. And like you've seen a lot of this read option stuff lately where a guy will play the quarterback and the running back. They'll pinch in, they'll stop the running back, and then they'll go back outside and tackle the quarterback. Good luck doing that against the Ravens. Because if you're not fully committed to pinching in against Derrick Henry, you're not going to make that tackle. And if you're not fully committed to covering the outside against Lamar Jackson, you're not going to make that tackle either. So they've got, and they're basically just running the ball, throwing it when they need to, throwing it down the field. Well, the only player who's not producing in their entire offense, and it's an anomaly, is Mark Andrews. And who knows what's going on with him, but they're using Isaiah Likely as the tight end instead. And they lost 2 close games. The Raiders game is kind of inexcusable. Like you don't blow a 10-point lead at home to the Raiders in week 2, but the Chiefs game's understandable, playing the defending champs on the road in week 1. And then they come out and like establish themselves against the Cowboys, hang on for the win, and establish themselves against the Bills and don't even let it get close at all. And this is a Bills team that just got done dismantling the Dolphins a couple of weeks ago. And they were dismantling them before Tua went out. And then last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think I'm not ready to make them the best team in the league yet, but the Ravens are a team that you could look up in a couple of weeks and say, hey, they started 0-2, but they've rattled off a bunch in a row, and they might be the best team in the AFC. For now, I'll just say they had the most impressive performance of week 4.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head at the beginning. So you have a downhill back, basically a tackle-to-tackle running back. You don't want to get Derrick Henry out wide. He's not going to be great in wide zone. I mean, he could run it, but he's not a one cut and go guy. This is a battering ram. Then you have a quarterback who typically wants to run everything either from pistol or the gun. I think the first 2 weeks, if you go and you look at even just looking box score stats, Jackson had 122 yards rushing against Kansas City. Kansas City has one of the best run defenses in the league right now. They didn't really know what they wanted to do with Derrick Henry. They didn't know. Then you go to week 2, Henry has 84 yards, but they kind of get in a situation where they lose again. That offense kind of looks dysfunctional. Then you go and you really look at the past 2 weeks. Derrick Henry's got 151 yards. Henry's got 200 yards almost against Buffalo. And I think what you found was Monken finally figured out when to use Henry and then when to use Lamar and create that yo-yo effect to where you're now, think about it this way. You're stretching the defense vertically with what you're doing with Henry, battering, going straight at him, but then you're stretching it horizontally. And it's called a surf technique, where you look like you're surfing down the line, you keep your shoulder straight, and you're slow playing the mesh. You can't slow play the mesh with Lamar Jackson. I mean, Lamar Jackson, my 6-year-old always thinks it's funny. You can put Lamar Jackson at running back in Madden, and he's like the number 1 running back in Madden. So it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a reason why you don't mess with him and you don't slow mesh him. And the problem with him too is even if you do where you kind of do the scrape exchange, where you send the defensive end right now to Henry, you let the linebacker or a safety behind him go ahead and scrape and get down on the line of scrimmage. It doesn't matter. You get him in open space, and they've been using the tight end on these slice actions to gain a guy. It's just, dude, there's so many different things you can do. I can go on this forever, but I think they finally figured it out. And if they did, they're already in DVOA way above the next, which is the Commanders, who also have a pretty decent run game. So yeah, this is a dangerous offense.
Yeah. I will say one thing about Mark Andrews, since I kind of like rained on him a little bit there. There was like so many highlights in that game of him throwing awesome blocks for Lamar Jackson. So he's doing a great job in the blocking game. That just hasn't helped my fantasy team very much. So I'm
the truth comes out.
The only thing I can remember about Mark Andrews in that game is him dropping the only pass that Lamar threw to him.
Yes. I remember that too. Maybe he has the yips. Maybe like he can't catch anymore, and they know that from practice, so they're just not throwing it to him.
I think he was summering with Chuck Knobloch in the offseason.
Yeah,
Something's going on. I will
Knobloch or
say that we
Justin Thomas.
yeah. I mean, to your guys' point, we had Lamar over rushing yards in that game. I'm going to say we correctly called it. Game script kind of screwed us, and he ended up with 54 instead of 57. But it was so clear that whenever he wanted to pull the ball, it was an automatic 9 yards without being touched. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like Henry. If Lamar wants to pull the ball, it's like he's pulling it. He's around the corner before anyone even knows what happens, and he's got a first down. Like, it was like 9 yards a pop so easily. I agree. They're going to be dangerous. I also said this in my in the article that I wrote from Takeaways, but it's like was stupid of anyone to think that the Ravens weren't going to be good. They've got an elite quarterback and a coach in John Harbaugh that's been doing it for 16 years. Like, he knows how to put together a winner. The Ravens are going to be there in January.
Well, and the defense is figuring it out too. I mean, that's kind of the thing that was my big question mark. We talked about this a bunch in the offseason about how my biggest question mark was you have all that intellectual talent, all of that player talent leave. Are you going to be able to replace that? It looked in the first couple of weeks. I think that's also another factor. First couple of weeks, Zach Orr looks like kind of a little bit, I don't know, kind of some of the things you question, usage of some players. And then the last 2 weeks, they've been on fire. I mean, this is a top 10 defense DVOA. That this is the same scheme that looks that is kind of killing everybody that's been playing it. So this is a dangerous team. Like you said, don't crown them yet for best in, but this is a team that we might look back in another 2 weeks and be like, they're 4-2, and why are we not having them as the best team in the NFL?
Yeah. And I want to get into the best teams in the NFL here, but just really quick on Scott's point about his article and how the Ravens started 0-2, but it's like they've got Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. You look at another team in that division in the Cincinnati Bengals, and like Joe Burrow is that guy. I think, like, yeah, maybe our threat ratings have him a little bit lower, but we know he's a really good quarterback. But I don't know that Zach Taylor is quite John. Well, I know he's not quite John Harbaugh, but I don't know if he falls into that category of the type of coach that you just automatically think they're going to get it corrected. And I think that's like how you end up falling to 0-3 instead of like, hey, we're 0-2. We got to put the foot on the gas now and make it work. But the Bengals did look better this weekend. So that division's going to get interesting real fast. All right. Let's get into some teams that maybe are the best team in the league, and we'll go record based. I'll start on this one just because I'm going to make like the homer pick. But I think it's the right pick right now. I'm going with the Chiefs. They're 4-0. Out of three people, one of us three had to pick the Chiefs, in my opinion. If you're going on this, there's only 2 4-0 teams. It's them and the Minnesota Vikings, and nobody thought anything of the Vikings coming into the year. A lot of people are focused on what the Chiefs haven't done, but what they have done is won 4 games. Now, the Rashee Rice injury is a big deal. If you come out of this game and like Rice wasn't injured, I would have full confidence in this pick. But Scott mentioned it off the top. You've got Kareem Hunt back from the dead as your main ball carrier. You've got Sky Moore playing every snap. You got Justin Watson might be your best receiver right now. So those are all the problems. But they held the Chargers offense to 10 points, a Chargers team that had been playing pretty well. As Cody alluded to earlier, they're one of the best run defenses in the league right now. They still have Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes on the offensive side, and I think they have a good offensive line, especially from guard to guard. And the tackles haven't been causing that much of a problem. So if you assume that Mahomes is going to play better than he has, and make it work, if their defense can be as good as it was in years past or was last year, I still think they're the champs until somebody beats them. And I'm not even saying like beats them for the Super Bowl, like even just beats them in a game this year. They've won 10 games in a row. They're the only team in the league that can say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Chiefs are just boring content at this point. And like what I mean by that is like everyone expects them to win. They keep winning. The only thing you can say is that they didn't win by enough, right? I agree that the injuries are an issue, right? Like I mean, first of all, it's hard to. They've won 10 straight games by a total of 61 points. If you take out the Dolphins game, where Mike McDaniel and Tua were paralyzed by the cold in Kansas City, they've won 9 of those 10 games by 42 points, which is pretty wild. This year, they've won 4 games in a row, each time scoring increasingly less points, which I think is actually probably hard to do, right? But to me, the reasoning behind that is like every week they seem to lose a key piece of their offense. The latest reports on Rashee Rice are that they don't think he has a torn ACL, and that he is going to. They don't know when he'll be back. It's probably long term, but he might be back before the playoffs. The reality of the Chiefs is that they're going to win somewhere between 12 and 14 games, right? They're going to be in the playoffs. And if they are marginally healthy and Pat Mahomes is their quarterback and Andy Reid's their coach, they should be the team to beat. So we can't really argue with you, Sasha. Congrats on taking the pick that's tough to argue with.
Well, I make the show notes, so I get first pick. All right. We'll go to Cody second on this. We don't have to belabor the Chiefs point, but that is interesting on the Rashee Rice injury front. The longer it was taking for them to come out and officially say he had a torn ACL, the more hope I got. And the latest reports are that, yeah, him and Hollywood Brown could be playoff performers for the Chiefs. Cody, who's your most impressive?
If the NFL really wanted to perpetuate the narrative of the NFL wanting the Chiefs to win, they could come out right now and be like, we're giving Rashee Rice an 8-game suspension for creating a 6-car pileup in Dallas.
Right.
He's suspended for the next 8 games. Think about it, Roger. Think about it.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great idea.
Sorry. Go ahead, Cody.
Oh, no. I'll say one thing about the Chiefs that is a concern that needs to be watched. I think we understand Mahomes kind of super exceeds what anything's going on offensively. He just kind of raises the level of play for everybody. We've gone down this train arguing about, like you said, it's boring content at this point, like arguing about their offense. It's going to get figured out. They're going to score at least, the amount of points that they need in order to win more times than not. I will say the passing defense should be a major concern going forward. That's something that we talked about in the offseason with McDuffie moving outside. Now, Shamari Connor's done pretty decent at the nickel spot, but I do think that this is going to be something that needs to keep an eye on. Passing defense is critical. I know that we had that weird little first month of the NFL where, scoring's down, passing's down, but going forward, if you don't have a good passing defense, it's just something to look at. So I'll go my best team that I think is the most complete team in the NFL right now is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. And I call it total football. We talk about complementary football of, the offense and the defense working together, offense working together, the run game with the passing game working together, the blitz with the coverage aspect working together. This is a team that's a total package. Now, I'm with everybody. Like, how are you going to pick Sam Darnold over Patrick Mahomes? I think when you look at this as a terms of just what is it doing in terms of a team, they've beaten 3 of the best Shanahan offenses in a row, and they've done it pretty resoundingly. Now, I do understand that the box score looks a little bit tighter against the Packers than it actually was. They pretty much let off the gas in that second half and kind of played base defense. And in the NFL, you're going to get caught, especially when Jordan Love's your quarterback, who I think we all admit is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. But defensively, what they're doing, it is not what they were doing last year, but it is more nuanced now. They're bringing in more packages. Their run defense is solid. Pass defense looks relatively good. I think they do have some weaknesses in the secondary, but they're kind of mitigated by the pressure. Offensively, until Darnold shows up as a turd, then we need to just assume that this is like the second coming of Brock Purdy. I mean, I think we've seen all the memes of him and Purdy with each other in San Francisco talking. To me, this is, there's a reason why McConnell signed him. JJ McCarthy was supposed to be that guy. He got hurt, and now Darnold's kind of gone through. This is an easy offense. I think we talk about this all the time. This is an easy offense, and now that they have Addison back, it's just even more dangerous.
It's interesting you talk about like Darnold and Purdy being together. Darnold is like readily admitted, and even though he's the more experienced guy and has been in the NFL longer, that he learned a lot from Brock Purdy about like how to prepare and how to play the offense. So that stop might have been the key to him being ready to take advantage of this next stop.
I mean, I think people would be surprised, especially at the quarterback position, the lack of coaching that is around that position. And you're like, wait a second, we're giving these guys $50-60 million a year. Why are we not getting these guys coached up? But I just being in the business that I'm in and doing some of the consulting stuff in the offseason with some of these quarterbacks, you would be shocked that these guys just are not getting that film breakdown. They're not, coaches aren't telling them what to look for, getting taught coverages, how to read coverages. Then you have a guy like a Purdy that kind of comes in and fits right in with the system. Maybe has some coaches that kind of explain some things toward him, has kind of maybe a little bit better of a work ethic or what to actually work on, not, working smarter, not necessarily harder. You have a guy in Shanahan. Look, man, I mean, Shanahan being able to do what he's done at kind of every place is a quarterback whisperer. Guys, I don't forget his dad is in the office every day. Mike Shanahan is there's kind of an argument that Mike Shanahan is the shadow GM with the 49ers, that they have the Shanahan camera. I don't know if you guys know about these, but the Shanahan cameras where he watches the meetings and he knows what's going on. I saw something on social media. Somebody was talking about the first time that they were there, that they talked about, Mike Shanahan just kept talking about Brock Purdy. And he was like, why are we talking about Brock Purdy? Like, you have Trey Lance, you got Jimmy Garoppolo, but you keep talking about the 7th round draft pick. It's irrelevant. And he's like, you don't let a guy like that leave. So I don't be confused with that. And I think sometimes later on, I think we're finding out that quarterbacks can have a rebirth if they get with the right coach and their confidence hasn't completely been shattered.
And then, Kyle Shanahan got drunk at the Super Bowl and admitted to everyone that he knew Purdy was better than those guys from the beginning.
I've actually already purchased the cameras that I'm going to be putting in, especially in your house, Sasha. So, and just before we leave the Vikings are 4-0. Their last 3 games, they've beat the Packers, the Texans, the Niners. This was the hard part of their schedule. Mm-hmm. Let me read to you their next 10 games. They play the Lions once, which that could be a loss. Let me read the other 9 games coming up for the Vikings.
Okay.
If I can find it. Versus the Jets, at the Rams, versus the Colts, at the Jaguars, at the Titans, at the Bears, versus the Cardinals, versus the Falcons, versus the Bears. There's a chance that they're going into week 15 at 13-1. Like, there's a real chance they win 9 out of their next 10 games. Their schedule sucks for the next 10 games. So whether or not we think they're the best team, like, they could really be the 1 seed in the NFC.
And momentum's a real thing. And I don't think like people want to think that parity in the NFL or the NFL, it's not like college, you don't get this momentum. When you're sitting there and you're looking at, and remember they've already got a loss. They don't have a loss yet, but even if they take a loss, like we don't think they're going to be undefeated. But this is a team with confidence. This is a team. I think this is one of the better coaching staffs in the NFL. I mean, Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores looked like they were perfectly paired for each other. So yeah, that's you start looking at it and you're like, okay, well, we don't know. I mean, Seattle might be good by the end of the year, but we know the Packers and the Lions, and those, I mean, they're 2 games where you're like, okay, maybe they're going to have, those are games that are going to be tough is their division games and they've already played the Packers once in Green Bay. So yeah, Scott, I think you hit it.
Yeah. Scott, did you have another team to highlight, or can we bring the magic producer on stage?
Yeah, I think there's an argument to be made for the Lions for all the reasons I already laid out in their performance. I won't belabor it, but I think they could potentially have the best offense in the league, and they can run and pass. And if that defense improves, I am looking forward. I think it's in 2 weeks. I'm really looking forward to that Vikings-Lions game.
Me too.
So
it's going to be awesome.
I'd put the Lions up there.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. The Lions, a lot of people's early season Super Bowl pick, and definitely haven't done anything to dissuade from that. I'm bringing on the man, the myth, the miracle, Felix Johnson, our producer. Felix, how are we feeling today?
No, I'm feeling okay. Why am I a miracle? Like, I mean, I guess I am a miracle. I'll take it. It's whatever.
All right. Felix is our resident power ranker here at Field Vision. So we're going to give him a chance to make his debut here. I'm just going to read his power rankings from 10 to 1, and we'll point out some things that we disagree with and let him defend himself. 10, Baltimore Ravens. 9, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 8, Green Bay Packers. 7, Dallas Cowboys. 6, Buffalo Bills. 5, San Francisco 49ers. 4, Houston Texans. 3, Detroit Lions. 2, Kansas City Chiefs. And 1, Minnesota Vikings. So I'll start with this. I'm nothing if I'm not fair. Your top 3 are the 3 teams we just mentioned as potentially the best teams in the NFL. So you're not the worst power ranker I've ever met, which is good since we made you the power ranker for Field Vision. But I'm sure there would be some bones to pick somewhere. I'll let Scott start off there.
I've got a lot of bones to pick. If I first would like to, Felix, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, I guess.
Are we need what is it producer Felix? Is it Felix the cat? Is it the incomparable Felix Johnson? Like what do we call Felix?
Felix?
Just Felix.
Just
like
Felix?
Just Felix.
Maybe it's just Felix.
That's fine.
Instead of the incomparable Felix Johnson, it's just Felix Johnson.
Just Felix.
Okay. I'm not as nice as Sasha. I agree with his comment that your first 3 in some order are the 3 that we picked. So good job there. I definitely have issues with the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys suck. I didn't think that they should have been in the rankings last week at 10. They completely almost got beat by Daniel Jones, and somehow they moved up 3 spots in the rankings to 7. So I have an issue there, but that's not the issue I want to talk about. The issue.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The issue I want to talk about is the Houston Texans, who are at number 4, and somehow they beat the Jaguars at home, scoring. They were behind until like 30 seconds left in the game. It's been established that the Jaguars are probably the worst team in the league, right? They're 0-4. And somehow that feat of the Texans beating the Jaguars moved them up 3 spots from 7 to 4. And here's not that I actually do, Felix, think that the Texans should be in this list somewhere, but they're 3-1. That 3-1 has been really unimpressive, right? Their wins are against the Bears, where they couldn't manage to cover. It was a 1-score game, against the Jaguars, and then I believe against the Colts in week 1, where they beat them by 2 points, and it's kind of been proven that the Colts aren't that good since. So they haven't beaten anyone of any value, and the one team that they played that was good is the Vikings. They got shelled by them. So maybe just talk to me about them being number 4.
I think particularly with the Texans, you look at CJ Stroud, and this year hasn't been as productive, if you will, as last year was. But I think with the addition of Nico Collins becoming this guy, I think this is a completely different team than what they were last year, and more dangerous. And I kind of talked about it in last week's with the Steelers, where Justin Fields' athleticism added a little bit of another layer to their offense. Didn't necessarily make it better, but it added another layer. And so you see what the Steelers have done so far this year. I think Nico Collins being all of a sudden a top 3, it looks like, receiver in the league adds another layer to their offense. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like the Chiefs. They keep winning, and they don't really control who's on their schedule. I think we all get a little shocked by the Vikings. So.
Yeah,
All right.
I'll give a quick piece of context or shout out here since you brought up Nico Collins. Number 1 in our threat ratings through 4 weeks in the entire NFL. So there's
he
a
had 12 for
decent
151 this
point you made
weekend.
there.
Yeah.
So.
I'll allow it. I agree with you. He's a piece that not very many other people have.
Can I talk about the Cowboys, please? I need to get this off my chest because I think the Cowboys, particularly with them and the San Francisco 49ers, have had the same exact season, but we treat them completely differently. They're both 2-2 and have had the same season, and the Cowboys suck. I don't get it. And had it not been for Fred Warner, the 49ers would have gotten blown out by the Vikings too. So it's the same thing, and the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey's not stateside. So, I'm more worried about them.
Yeah. The 49ers, well, I'll say this. The 49ers have more of a track record than the Cowboys. And I know the Cowboys have won a lot of regular season games, but the 49ers have made deep playoff runs. They've been in the Final Four, I think, 5 out of 6 years, either 4 or 5 out of 6 years. They've been in the conference championship game. They've made a couple of Super Bowls. And that stuff matters. It's a pedigree. And it doesn't matter that the Cowboys have won 12 regular season games a bunch of years. They haven't done anything with it. And if you're not getting better, you're getting worse.
It wasn't week 4. It would matter if it wasn't week 4. If we were talking in January about the Cowboys and if they're going to win that game, then sure. But they win 12 games every year because they're good in the regular season every year.
Yeah, until they don't. They've won 12 games the last few years.
Yeah.
But before that,
since
they
Mike
were going
McCarthy's
back and
got
forth
there
between being 500 and having a good season and being 500 and having a good season. And Dak's been the quarterback for damn near a decade, if not a decade. So there's more than a 3-year sample size of the Dak-led Dallas Cowboys.
And they've been a playoff team for most of it. So
I'll be honest with you, the 49ers compared to the Cowboys is a completely erroneous argument. I mean, the talent level, and two, even if you just look at DVOA, I mean, the 49ers are both top 10 DVOA in offense and defense. They don't have a run game. Get Christian McCaffrey back, and then now that offense unlocks, and then we're thinking less and less about the Cowboys. Cowboys have real issues. I mean, real actual issues where they have absolutely no run game. They have no way of actually stopping the run. They feast on that East, but I'm just telling you right now, I do not think that everybody here in DFW is shaking having to defend what the Commanders are about to bring. And then if they get Devontae Adams, right, this whole house of cards might collapse here in the Cowboys. So I'm with you, Scott. I think that's way too high. I wouldn't even put him in the top 10. You can't trade for an interior defensive lineman. Those guys, God doesn't make very many of them. And that's why people don't trade them. That you hold on to the ones you got, and then you try and accumulate some in free agency. I mean, maybe you can get Dolphins to go on a fire sale and give you, a 38-year-old Calais Campbell. Maybe, but I don't think that that's possible. That's why I don't think that that's not probably the greatest of arguments that you've ever had. I would definitely say that the 49ers are much better than the Cowboys.
I'll leave Felix alone for a second. I think that both of you are saying that the Cowboys could potentially not be in the top 10 at all. So give me a team outside the top 10 that you're moving in to the top 10 that didn't make the list at all.
Let me look at the list. Let me see here. Oh, well, I think the one that he took out, the Steelers. Okay. I mean, look, here's the thing. Sleeping on Mike Tomlin, one, is not a great thing to do. Two, I think what they are doing, Arthur Smith, what they're trying to do, they have the perfect setup in there to do. And Tomlin, I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day. I mean, Tomlin essentially is look, if I can't score points, neither can you. And they've completely locked down that defense. That defense is really good. They're letting Minka Fitzpatrick cook again. Letting him move around. To me, that rush You even got Cameron Hayward is like at top of one. I mean, he's at the top, towards the top of our havoc rating for interior defensive linemen. The ageless wonder. So he's like Calais Campbell. He's playing on into his late 30s. So to me, that would have been a team that I would have put in there with them. They're 3-1. You got to honor that. Look, you can't lie through the first 4 weeks of the NFL. There's stats that back that up. You go 3-1 in the first week, you are one of the better teams in the NFL. Now, can Fields end up blowing up or whatever, maybe, but I don't think so. I think that this is a team to keep an eye on, especially in a division where the Bengals don't look that great. And then the Ravens maybe figure it out. But we've talked about this. You can easily have 3 teams in the playoffs from that division.
Yeah.
I think that's
sorry, go ahead, Felix.
I think that's why, like in regards to the Cowboys, and with the Steelers too, I think with the divisions will find its water for all of the teams, whether that means Washington comes down or Cincinnati comes up or whatever the case may be. I think that once we get into more divisional games and into the meat of the season, unfortunately, but it's football, more injuries come in and different things like that, we'll have a better look at what the Steelers are and what the Steelers have been for the last decade as a 500 football team. So, and I like I said, I like Justin Fields and what he adds to that offense, and he's been really, really good this year. I don't see it lasting that much longer. Yeah. Unless and there's reports out there that they might go out there and get Devontae Adams, and then all of a sudden there's another layer to that offense, like I just said in last week's article. But I'm interested in the Steelers. They are sitting right at 11 if there was an 11 spot, but I'm going to drop them out because, I mean, like Scott said earlier, the Colts aren't good, and they lost to them. That's I know it's kind of fickle, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm not on the Cowboys or the Steelers, but give me the Seahawks or Commanders over either of those teams. Is who I would.
Oh yeah, Seahawks too. I mean, you could talk me into the Seahawks.
Yeah, the Commanders is tough because you're asking yourself, do I believe what I see with my eyes so far, or do I believe what I thought coming in? And I think you have to lean towards the former there and believe with what you see with your eyes. Just like, I mean, Minnesota's number 1 in the entire rankings right now, and we didn't think they were going to be much coming into the year. I don't know if I get the Cowboys all the way out of the top 10, but at the very least, the Ravens, Packers, and Bucks would all be ahead of them, the 3 teams behind them, and they might slide in there at number 10. Although you could make a pretty compelling argument for those 2 teams Scott mentioned as well. We've got to move on. We have not looked forward yet. We're well into this pod. Felix, it was fun. Look forward to that every week. You're gonna get made fun of. That'll make you think twice while you're making those power rankings.
Hey,
going exactly with what I want.
Yeah. Hey, Just Felix, good list, man. It's a good list.
I will say I don't know if the Ravens are as good as some people think, but I'll leave that there.
Okay. Felix doesn't think the Ravens are that good. I don't care. I just removed him from the stage. All right, fellas. Let's go through picks for this upcoming week. What I want to do this week, instead of taking it around the horn, for time's sake, we're going to go one by one and each give all 3 of our picks, and then we'll get into any games that we want to talk about that we didn't get to at the end here. So, Scott, I'll let you lead us off with that.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you. You're going to be mad at me. I feel like I have to ask it. Do we know how we did last week and whether or not we can make fun of each other?
Felix wrote them down. I know that, but Felix, type the picks into the chat from last week when you get a chance, and we'll move on. We can make fun of each other later.
Yeah. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it afterwards. I know I got Roma Dunze over wrong. I think I got the over on the Commanders Cardinals game right. Yep. And the third pick was Atlanta cover. Felix, you're not going to know this, but I'm pretty sure it was at 1.5 when I said Atlanta cover, and they won by 2 points, and then the line went to 2.5. So I'm taking credit for that. I'm 2-1. You guys have to figure out your own record. All right.
I plead the fifth. I have no recollection of what I picked.
All right. I am so my 3 picks for this week, and I am if people are following along with our self scout, our the field vision model did quite well last week. I think we hit for non-neutral matchups and for games hit 68% correct. So I'm trusting the model this week. My pick against the spread is the biggest signal we have. It's the Niners to cover 7.5 against the Cardinals. I am fully off board of the Cardinals being good. I think the Niners started to find their footing last week. Jordan Mason right now is the highest rated running back in terms of threat in the league. Deebo Samuel's back. It's in San Francisco. I'm a little worried about a backdoor cover by the Cardinals, but their offense has not been able to move the ball against much shittier defenses than what the Niners will bring next week. So we've got the Niners winning by almost 11 points with a 7.5 point spread. Give me Niners to cover 7.5 against the Cardinals. The other biggest signal in the app this week is the over in the Packers-Rams game. So you got Packers at the Rams. It's at 48.5 total points right now. Our app's got it almost at 51.4. I mean, that's almost 3 points of cushion. I don't think either of these defenses is good. I don't know if Jair Alexander is going to play or not, but the Rams at home, I expect them to move the ball. Little bonus pick. I also like the Rams to cover the 3 points in that. And then my last one, I already talked about him. This isn't quite as big of a signal. And I know we're running into some issues of not all the prop lines being out yet, but I'm going to take Jordan Mason over rushing yards against the Cardinals. Commanders ran all over him last week. The Jordan Mason's, let's see if I can find it really quick, but Jordan Mason hasn't rushed for under, I think, 80 yards in a game the entire season. And he's, I mean, first 4 games, he hasn't had less than 20 carries. So give me Jordan Mason over rushing yards against the Cardinals.
All right. A lot of Cardinals Niners stuff there, which seems like a really exciting game. The way the Cardinals looked last week.
I'm just trying to win picks.
I'm gonna go next because I'm reading the chat here and I got bad news for you guys. Really bad news for you guys. I was 3 for 3. I had Jahmyr Gibbs over 54.5 rushing yards. Minnesota Green Bay over, hit by a mile. I don't even know what it was, but I know they scored a ton of points. And San Francisco cover -10, and they beat the Patriots 30-13. So just you heard it here first. Trust my picks the most. This week I'm gonna go for my over/under. I'll go with the Washington-Cleveland over. Washington has been scoring a ton of points and not stopping anyone from scoring. Our model has it, I think, about 23-23. Like it's a close spread game. It's a minus, and that's 46. I think the over/under on the game is somewhere around 44. So there is a signal from the model there. If Deshaun Watson can score against anyone, it's probably the Washington defense. And I'm just going to ride that Washington train to assume they're going to keep scoring 30 points a game until they don't. That game's actually kind of interesting. It's at least a close spread game, but I don't know that anyone's like lining up to watch it unless you're just wanting to watch the Commanders. The next game, this is one that people are definitely lining up not to watch. Like if there's an option not to watch this game and an option to watch it and you weren't allowed to watch anything else, you'd probably just go football free this weekend. But I've got New England Patriots -1 against the Dolphins. The Dolphins, and just full transparency here, the model was very close to the spread on a lot of games this week. There wasn't a lot of super strong signals one way or the other. We have New England winning by about 2 at home. The Dolphins have just looked inept since Tua went out. Like they haven't even competed. They haven't even been in these games. The Patriots, at least, I realized they lost by over 10 points the last 2 weeks in a row. but they at least, I think, are competing, at least trying to win. And I think that at home against the Tualus Dolphins, the way the Dolphins have looked, I'll go with the Patriots -1. And
hey, Sasha, on that, can I ask maybe it's a Cody question or either you question on that game?
Yeah.
Why is it that Matt LaFleur can win two games in a row with Malik Willis as his quarterback, but Mike McDaniel seems completely lost when Tua goes down with an injury?
Well, that offense only works with Tua. I mean, that's kind of what it is. Like where Tua's strengths are essentially just like being able to pass anything in the middle. You can't go outside. The run game only works if you're able to then pass down the field. The protections aren't great. So you quick release which is something that Tua is strong with. So when you lose somebody like that, that's essentially the engine. It's like losing like a Peyton Manning or somebody like that, where, you know, that's the only guy that we got. We don't have anybody behind him. And I think that's kind of where that offense really only goes through Tua, which is a reason why, you know, a guy like LaFleur, a guy like Shanahan gets a little bit of a bump in terms of, hey, this guy might actually be an offensive genius. Whereas Mike McDonald has kind of created a meme offense that if you don't have Tua there, or you don't have everybody that's healthy there, like Waddle goes down, then everybody can lean on Hill. You know, you don't have a chain. We saw this last year. It's just going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and it needs to evolve. It needs to figure out an actual like downhill run game that can control the game, be able to throw outside of the numbers, which is something that this offense doesn't do without doing some sort of gimmicky wheel thing. So that's why.
All right.
Yeah.
Meme offense. I was trying to bait Cody into saying that.
I knew where you were going, so I read your mind.
All right, Sasha.
I'm gonna
Sorry.
have to get a
We
better
also might see
explanation.
we also might see Drake May in this game, which will be good for your cover.
Yeah, love it. My last pick is the Brian Thomas Jr. over. I'm not sure that we have the exact spread on that yet, but whatever it comes in at, I'm taking the over. It's the strongest signal in the model. He's plus 80. They like to target him down the field. They're playing the Colts defense, and Trevor Lawrence has been increasingly throwing to Brian Thomas Jr. game after game. It's going up every game. This is operating under the assumption that Trevor Lawrence might play better at some point. So that might be a faulty assumption. But even if he doesn't play great, if he throws to him enough, Thomas went over last week just on volume from Trevor Lawrence throwing to him. So I'll take Brian Thomas Jr. over on receiving yards. Cody, you got some picks?
Yeah. So you went 3-0. I definitely went 0-3. I had Marvin Harris Jr. over. I think he had like less than 50 yards. I said Cincinnati, Carolina was going to be just a pillow fight. Ended up going over it. Ended up being a score fest. Cincinnati looks like their offense is going back. I actually thought Seattle was going to cover and do a lot better. Obviously, later in the week, you start figuring out that they don't have any defensive linemen to play in that game, and it ended up being that line just ran all over them. So didn't get those games. Hopefully, I can bounce back this week. I'm going to go with
a lot of pressure on these picks, Cody.
Yeah,
we're working out of a hole.
Sweat. I'm sweating right here thinking about this. I'm going to go with the Bills Texans over. I think both these offenses are pretty good. I think the Bills are going to want to come back and kind of reassert themselves offensively. I do think that Houston has a pretty decent run defense, but I do think that there's some things when you overload on the run against the Bills that they can take advantage of that down the field. So I think I see this being, we have the model like barely over, and I think that that's about right. I don't think this is going to be like a 34-31 shootout, but I do think that this game is going to hit the over on that. I do think the Steelers are going to cover. I wore my Steelers hat today. Go fighting Cordell Stewart's. I'm going to go with Steelers cover here. I think that they're better than the Cowboys. I think that defense is going to give the Cowboys a lot of problems. They can't run the ball. this is going to just unleash really, I mean, name an edge on the Steelers. They've had, I think they've been one of the top. Watt has done it, Herbig's done it, and I think Highsmith is already within like each week has hit like top 10 havoc pass rush at some point. Now their interior guys are cooking. We had Cameron Hayward last year. We had the Benton kid this week. This is a defensive line that's just going to feast on that. So I think that they're going to cover. I think they win outright. And then my last, go ahead,
Cody, just on that really quick. Do all your friends in Dallas hate you?
Well, I mean, I would say that my kids get it worse because like we've indoctrinated them not to be Cowboys fans. So like they fight with kids all the time at school. So yeah, everybody knows like we are not Cowboys fans.
That's classic. Like I don't want to admit to it, but yeah, you hit it spot on.
Yeah, no, I never. You will not find me.
He talks shit on the Cowboys like 3 times a podcast.
Hey, I'm trying to get, just put me on DFW radio somewhere, and I'll be
DFW's most wanted. The way you talk about the Cowboys,
I can be your heel.
Him and Rashee Rice.
Yeah. And then my player prop's going to be, I actually do think that against the Jets, I don't think that's a great matchup for just the Vikings in general of going over on passing. So I'm going to go with Jetta is going to under 82.5. That's a big number. Now, can he get that? Sure. I just think Sauce is actually playing pretty well. So is DJ Reed. I mean, everybody knows like I'm a big DJ Reed stan. So I've got him. Our model actually has him at 70. I think that's a better number. It's still high, but I think that's a better number, especially with Addison being back. He's going to eat a little bit of those yards. Obviously, you want to get it to Justin Jefferson, but that might take a little bit of the yards down. This is still a good defense. So I'm going to go with the under on that.
Okay. Final question, Cody.
Yes.
Little Colorado Buffaloes question. Better quarterback, Cordell Stewart or Shadur Sanders?
Oh, Cordell.
Yeah.
I like, Cordell in college was basically unstoppable in that power offense that they had. Shadur, look, I like Shadur. I think he holds on the ball a little bit too long. I think some of the stuff that he said in the offseason about Sean Lewis's offense, which is Bryle's offense, which is a half-field read. It's a leverage offense. You throw the guy open, and him talking about he couldn't read it was a little alarming. I do think that his sack avoidance is pretty good. I'm just really interested as we go further. People were off of them. Now they're on them. Are you on them for clicks? Are you on? I think that there's better quarterbacks. I think, Quinn Ewers for one is probably, to me, is probably the best quarterback in that for next year.
All right. Baited Cody into some bonus college analysis and some early pre-draft stuff for next year. Love to see it.
I know we don't have time for this, but wouldn't an equally or maybe more interesting question be Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning? Don't answer that question. Cody. That's 10 minutes. But
don't answer.
Maybe you can tweet about it
on next week's episode. A brief synopsis of the history of Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fellas, can I just say this? A lot of shitty games this week.
Yeah, this is kind of a boring week.
Maybe it's time to pay attention to your kids on Sunday a little bit. I don't know.
Hey, the buys start this week, so there's less to choose from, and it's a good week to go on a walk, go to the zoo, check out a botanical garden, whatever floats your boat. But nonetheless, that's going to do it for the matchup. Follow us on Twitter at FieldVisionMI, on Instagram at FieldVisionSports. Go download the app. You can find links at fieldvisionsports.com for that. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to The Matchup by Field Vision Sports.